Hello, and welcome to my presentation on game culture and the power of distributed communities. First off, we have to ask, what is game culture and how are these distributed communities powerful? And to be honest, what are distributed communities? So let's start off with game culture. Now, as you can see here, I'm playing Battlefield 4, a game on PC, and in this, my role is to cooperate with other players to take capture points. Now, although this is a game, you can actually see these types of actions in real life. I work at Eakin Burgers in Wellington, and each position that we have a certain role to play. Be it on the till, be it on the grill, wherever. We have to work as a whole, especially when it's busy, to run as a unified unit. So we are already performing these game culture activities. They aren't just what you see in video games. It's just that they are fosters or can be fostered in the gaming culture. So these are pretty specific routines. I mean, you have to do this, you have to do that, be it at work or be it in this type of game. But Steinkühler recognizes that in the MMORPG lineage, that the intention of the developers was a lot different to the actual outcome. I mean, people were playing the game to hunt down the Chinese Dina farmers, and that wasn't intended, and nor was the racist undertones that began because of it. So I mean, there is that sort of flexibility that we see in the game culture of people thinking for themselves and thinking as a group outside of the box. So moving on then to distributed communities. So I'm sure a lot of us are actually a part of these distributed communities, be it Facebook, be it Twitter, be it Tumblr. Any of these count towards actually being a distributed community. I mean, you have these huge fan bases of, say, Lady Gaga, and they are seen as a single entity, and not just by the people that are involved with it, but the people from the outside. I mean, if I saw that and I saw that somebody followed Lady Gaga and tweeted about a lot of her tweets, I would see them as part of this group. And it's funny because these are all sort of self-governed. They aren't, obviously you have the main sort of focal point, be it doesn't have to be a person, it could be an event, it could be whatever. But because there are so many people, it's a self-governed organization. They talk to each other, they talk amongst each other, and decide their problems with each other. So that is what a distributed community is. So I mean, I'm showing you now a video of the PT, which was a game that was released on PS4 that baffled actually a lot of people. It's obviously the horror game, and people just didn't know how to play it. They didn't know how to complete it. They didn't know what the purpose of the game was. None of it was revealed to them. It was just a game that appeared on the PS4 marketplace. So these forums began cropping up, sharing their experiences of the game. And from there, people shared their own, said, oh, I did this, I found this clue, I worked out that if you did this, and especially specifically, there's a certain point in the game where you actually have to go to the start menu, which is breaking the fourth wall of the immersion, but that is how you progress in the game. And that was only discovered through these forum posts and through these discussions. And it ended up actually being a marketing campaign for the new Silent Hills game, and PT meaning playable trailer. But this was achieved as a community. They worked this out as a community, not because somebody told them. So let's look at game culture and the collective intelligence. McGonagall's quote here: for immersive games, ordinary digital networks become human networks with the capacity to accomplish amazing feats. The subjective experience of immersion cemented Cloudmaker's collective identity and changed the player's notion of what network technology could be used to accomplish. So in saying this is like them being one entity, and they draw from everyone's experiences, everyone's differences, everyone's way of life, and collect it together in one almost utopian vision of intelligence. Because of you have all these range of ideas, you are able to come up and complete these amazing goals. But is it really good or a bad thing? I mean, when Kevin wrote about the anonymous situation, I felt really strange about it. I didn't know whether to feel, obviously it's unethical and illegal, and I wouldn't want it happening to myself. I wouldn't want somebody in my house breaking my privacy. But then the good that came out of it, because they found out who this guy who was mistreating the animals was, does that weigh it up? But in saying that, this is the same kind of argument GCSB and the NSA actually use. So is this actually a valid argument? Is it just because it's in the hands of masses instead of a government organization that it's different? So let's look at an example that I think quite relevant to this. So collective intelligence is essentially, it's not a new idea. Corporations have been using these think tank ideas to get certain people from certain areas of the companies to achieve a goal. So you have the financial man, you have the marketing, and they all have their own input to achieve a certain goal or to get through a problem. But it's also relevant in this relevant to the gaming culture with both MMOs and MOBAs, which, if you haven't heard of, are multiplayer online battle arenas. So essentially, you have to have collective intelligence in the game. That's part of the programming of the game. Looking at this video now, Smite, basically you have certain game modes, but usually it's a 5-on-5 with each player being a certain god. And what it really comes down to is your intelligence of not only knowing what character you're choosing, but other people in your team say, okay, this person is a long range expert. They can do damage from long range. So you want somebody who's shorter or who can stun somebody so they can do the damage. Or so it's all these types of collective intelligence that people talk to each other and go, okay, well, if you go for him, I'll go with him. If you go up this lane in the middle, then I will go on the left-hand side with this other player. So it's all about this collective intelligence that enables you to actually compete in the game. And I obviously can't talk about this collective intelligence without mentioning Minecraft. Now, if you haven't heard of Minecraft, it's a really simplistic game. It's built on survival, crafting, and resource collecting. It's blocks. It's basically video game Lego. And Steinkühler states in The Mango Play that we need to understand the emergent game cultures within virtual worlds, not simply the design objects that hit the shelves. So when the developers, Mojang, originally came out with the idea, I don't think they sort of realized how much this game fostered this collective intelligent game culture. I mean, people were grouping together and making these huge replicas of, say, scenes from Game of Thrones, from the Death Star, to huge replicas of cities. And not only that, people were actually working with their already developed intelligence of server design or programming to create game modes which replicated actual real-life games. You can see here, this is Ironfall, which is a Minecraft version of Titanfall, an EA game which is just an actual game, but they've made it in Minecraft, which to me is outstanding, that you could, with the intelligence everybody has, as a group of people, to say, okay, we're going to do this, how do we achieve this? And writing the code and doing all this voluntarily. I think that's an amazing feat of collective intelligence. So with this, I thought that this next quote was especially relevant. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. So it's easy to consider this positive points of collective intelligence. The interconnectivity of the internet allows us to talk to one another, share our experience, share our information. But in this video that we see here, what you're experiencing or what you're watching is a video gamer who was streaming live being what is known as swatted. So basically what this is a group of people with a collective intelligence have worked out this person's address, and the use of proxy servers, and through the use of, say, using a phone booth that's away from their home or anything like this. And so what they do is they ring in and call a fake hostage situation or somebody with a firearm. And that came down to a collective intelligence of people who decided that we were going to do this. And that's the bad side of it. So how about we look at ARGs now? So ARG means augmented reality game. A combination of real life skills and cooperating with others in a fictional context. So it's different from RPGs or simulations, is very slight. but it's more of a focus on real life skill integration in the game, as opposed to just becoming somebody else, becoming this character with these powers. Instead, using your own life experiences and your own skills in the game. So, I actually purchased this game, Cloud Chamber, on Steam when we were looking at it, and the game is actually classified as an ARG. They specifically say that this is an augmented reality game, and it's selling on Steam clearly shows this lack of ting techniques, which McGonagall describes as explicitly denying and purposely obscuring its nature as a game. Now, I think that goes down to more something McGonagall mentions later, in that it's harder to fool the immersive players nowadays, that they're wise to the technique. So the developers have just sort of said, okay, well, instead of using ting techniques, how about we be upfront about it, but still make it an immersive experience, which makes it slightly harder for them, but it's also interesting at how it's still achieved. So as you can see here, I actually, when I bought it and started playing it, I put a few comments down, my ideas around, and ended up having discussions with people, as you see here, so adding to people's information that they talked, added questions, and they say that you can actually get through the story fairly quickly, but the point is actually the communicating with one another to decipher what is happening in these videos that you see. So the game is actually designed on upvotes and best discussions and certain awards which work towards unlocking more information. So the more you talk to one another, the more you discuss, the more upvotes you get from your good points, the more likely you are to actually unlock more information for the story, which I think is a really great way of doing things and sort of cements this collective nature of an ARG. And as it's done this way, people who maybe don't have the particular skills to, say, put it through a skeptograph to look at the sound imagery or any of these sort of technical aspects, it still rewards people who are just asking the questions or challenging these ideas, or challenging the people who say, well, it's definitely this, and saying, well, actually, no, if you look at it from this perspective, maybe not. So there are a couple of things that I would kind of like to see if you think how I think. They're harder to classify, and one of them that I looked at was military simulators. And even in the name, it already says military simulator. So, I mean, you're going to think, okay, maybe it's not an ARG, it's a simulation. But I feel like there's an overlap there. In this game, it's a mixture of ex-military and immersive players who combine to actually recreate real military units, and they get involved in elaborate military campaigns, which the server designers have created through the game engines in Arma 2 or 3 now. So there's actually a full ranking system where players are actually required to undergo training before being promoted, or even actually accepted into the game. You have to get a interview done on Skype, then you have to make sure you understand the rules, and this is all voluntary. This is by no means what the developers of the games Arma 2 and Arma 3 intended, maybe in a sort of optimistic sense, but there's no way they could govern this. So this is all done through voluntary work. The players put in their own time to perform these interviews, to perform these training sessions. So the big thing I thought of it, as you can see in this video I've got here, is the actual in-game application of real-world skills. In this video, the YouTuber Devil Dog with a whole bunch of other ex-military units, and he's an ex-Marine himself, and what they're doing is they are watching over onto a battle, so that they're arranging different sides to come in on different directions onto this base to try and take the base to advance the military campaign. Now, all these application of real-world skills come in when they use compass readings. They're using map orienteering, the proper use of radio communications, and these are obviously a majority of skills which a lot of ex or current military will know and have to know. And so players are expected to teach it to one another. So they could take these skills that they've learnt in game and go out orienteering or use radio communications properly, or even compass reading, which in survival situations is key. So my belief is that the cooperation and the transfer of these real-world skills really make this an ARG. So I think that's why I justify it as an ARG. I mean, other people may have some words on that, which I'd love to hear about. So the other thing I thought I'd mention, which I definitely don't feel is an ARG, I would definitely say it's on the other spectrum, but it does have elements of it, and it was this event that happened called Twitch Plays Pokemon. Now, it's interesting because Twitch is a video game live streaming service, and in this case, the user actually decided to hook up a Pokemon emulator to controls which were chosen through the chat, so up, down, left, right, A, B, start, and select. All you had to do was type it in chat, and so the idea was to see as a community of watchers whether or not people would actually work together in order to control the game to completion. So the actual battle became of good and bad. So as stated earlier, when I said people purposely trying to do negative things with collective intelligence, they decided to try and halt the game. They were making sure that Pokemon would get lost. They were doing negative things. So it was this constant battle between the good and the bad. And so there's this community aspect, but obviously it lacks the outside skills. I mean, as a collective intelligence, it's more about being democratic and being fair to one another, as opposed to actually applying real-world skills. So I wouldn't say it was an ARG, but it has some interesting elements of it. So I say thank you guys for watching this presentation on game culture and the power of distributed communities, and let me know what you think about what I've talked about, whether you think military simulators are ARGs, or whether or not you think it is a good or bad thing of collective intelligence. I'd love to hear what you think, and we could actually form our own collective intelligence. So thank you for watching.